you think the Nintendo Switch 2 is a flop or not? You're wrong. Why do I say that? Well, most likely, if you click this video, you are either in one of two camps. The Nintendo shills or the anti-Nintendo camp. The YouTubers in these categories will manipulate numbers and oftentimes the facts as well to cater to their audience. So what is the reality of it? Let's try to figure it out today. Long story short, it's too early to tell. Video over, see you next time. For those of you who want numbers and data, we are going to check the past consoles and handhelds to figure out a baseline and, most importantly, a minimum number of sales for the Nintendo Switch 2 to go from failure to moderate success. The data I use comes from both the official Nintendo website as well as VG charts, which the latter gives bigger Switch 2 numbers since Nintendo has not updated their sales numbers since June 30th, 2025. Here is the graph for each of the console sales. As we can see, the NES sold 62 million consoles. The Super Nintendo sold 49 million, the N64 33 million, the GameCube 22 million, the Wii 102, the Wii U 14, the Switch 152, and the Switch 2 so far at 9.25 million units. Let's move this to the side and bring the handheld graph. This one is much shorter, I like that. The Game Boy and I assume Game Boy Color are mixed in together here, and they have 118 million units sold. The Game Boy Advance 82 million, the DS 154 million, and finally the 3DS 76 million units sold. Now the way to look at this is we need to figure out which of both consoles and handhelds sold the least amount of units and was still considered a success. We can easily eliminate the GameCube and Wii U here. Those are both commercial failures. What about the Nintendo 64? Well, that's our baseline because the Nintendo 64 is considered a moderate financial success. For the handhelds, it's even simpler. The lowest is the 3DS. It had a rough start, but Nintendo turned it around. Okay, one is console and one is handheld. So the prices are different, but the end result is still the same. To give us a better idea, the Nintendo 64 sold enough units in the late 90s to generate around $20 billion in today's money. So the number of units sold is low, but the cash is high. It's also important to note that most of the Nintendo 64 back in the day were bought when the console was on sale. And it's most likely the case with the 3DS as well. And that's how it was back then in the 90s, by the way. We'd buy consoles when they got cheaper. So when people claim that it was more expensive back then, they tend to admit that fact. These are the shills lying to you. So what's the freaking number per Henmo? Well, accounting for dev costs, tariffs, and inflation, if the Switch 2 sells under 30 million units sold, that means it's a complete failure. To be considered a moderate success, which is the basic of basics here, the Switch 2 will need to sell somewhere between 40 and 50 million units. If we go further up, 70 million would be a great success, and 100 million units sold is a phenomenon. Now the question is, will it sell that many consoles? It's hard to say, because the Switch 1 was so good and it was priced very low. People bought more than one, even bought new ones when their older Switch died. But with the crazy prices of the Switch 2, I mean, in Canada, buying the Switch 2 with Mario Kart World comes at $805 Canadian, with tax included. $725 tax in just for the console. I don't see people rushing in for this, and the sales are showing it as well. So far, it's not even past the Wii U, which was a catastrophic failure. In Japan, if they buy the Japanese only version of the Switch 2, it costs around $340 USD, but the international Switch 2 is about the same price as the US, at $470. So you know, if it breaks, man. See you later. So let's say to be safe, the Switch 2 would have to sell 45 million units to reach the goal line. Then it's about 20% of the way there. The first big wave happened. There's going to be a second one for Christmas, maybe, probably. I don't think it's going to be that much of a burst though, but I could be wrong. If Nintendo would have priced the Switch 2 cheaper, like they should have, at $400 US, they would need about 50 million units sold. But I think that they would have reached the goal more easily, or at least faster than they will now. They even raised the price of the Switch 1 to try and force people to buy the Switch 2. That's when I knew they sold less units than they thought they would. There is also popular opinion with the Palworld lawsuit, the patents, and all the bullshit Nintendo has done this year alone are not going to help with the sales. This is more of a Switch Pro. I don't think it's worth it. If you buy it and enjoy the console, I'm happy for you, but this is a generation I'm going to skip. Now I hear you thinking, but what about the games? Those count towards the success, right? Yes and no. The games have to sell to recuperate their costs first. Any amount of money over that could potentially be considered, but I'm not going to count them since the previous consoles were not counting game sales either. And that's because every game failure then has to be counted towards the Switch 2 losses as well, and every other console. This is not going to work out. I'm not doing that math, and I don't think anybody else will. Maybe some guy on Reddit that's got way too much time, but I don't. So is the Switch 2 a flop or not? Well, it's too early to tell. So far, it's a massive failure, but the sales are going to increase. we're going to have the answer to that question in a few years. Anybody else who has the answer right now is a freaking liar. But what do you think of the Switch 2? Buy or skip, flop or not? Let me know in the comments. So that's gonna be it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. I wish you a slime-tastic rest of your day, and I hope to see you in the next one.